down to 1 minute, and then Bangor has 1 minute left to go. Without further ado, I call this House to order and welcome the Prime Minister to open the debate that stands in his name. Hear, hear.
Okay. Madam, as me being a religious person, it's really important to me how other people interpret who I am, because religion and the dogma that it presents to me, even if I'm a Muslim, I don't know, from Jewish religion or being a Christianity, it's really important how those people see me, because how they interpret me or criticize me, it really depends. It's really strikes me because the religion is huge part of my identity. It presents my way of life, my way of thinking, and how do I perceive the world as it is. When someone attacks me and tries to make it as a criticism, or even especially on these portals of media, I perceive it really personally, and it creates a harm upon me, because they're jumping to conclusions, they are attacking on my individuality, and we believe this is a good way how we should restrict these harms. Now, because of the religion is so specific to interpret between people, because it presents their parts of identities or how they perceive things. And second of all, because we don't see that the issue of criticism is not so constructive on these medias, we believe that freedom of speech is good to be restricted here, because and so we do it upon other upon other cases, like I don't know, when someone criticizes the way how of sexual orientation of some people still on this media, but further on in my construction. Now, our model is simple. We will do this by religious definitions. It's different for Islam, what's attacking them, what's, I don't know, what is not constructive on the criticism on them, what's, well, let me see, what is insulting to, sorry, I bugged a bit. What's insulting for Islam, it's not the same thing what's insulting for Christian religion. So we believe it's, by their definition, will be a good way why someone on a request should ask something to be removed on. And this is specifically how, this is our mechanism, how this should be done. Now, our justification is next. Why does this criticism or these things or posts does simply have no value? Because 90% of them, especially on YouTube, especially on Facebook, have no real criticism intention is there. They're here to post, they're here to, I don't know, jump to conclusion based on these religions, to create jokes, to create puns, something like that, which is dimly attacking the dogmas of those people who perceive them. With me, as an individual who's Islamic and perceive some dogma like Muslims having a bomb on their head under turban, we perceive that we're generalized as culture, as religion, that we perceive there is a different gap, and we see different specific harms in this, and we believe this is okay to be censorized. Now, we believe and we say that there is a 10% good content or good material that's actually criticizing and saying something about religion, which is, I don't know, constructive, but we still believe, because of the media, how this is presented here, it should be taken away, because it still can be taken out of the context and still can be through posts or comments be turned into insults, and we believe it can be taken away. Also, we see there is still left place on the market of ideas where those people can express themselves. Those people, if they want to criticize, they can, have other types of debates. They can talk about communities. They can go to the communities of those religions, of the religion leaders, and actually justify, talk to them, and in that way, how to show the constructive criticism further on. Now, why do we level of justification? Why do we believe this is a good way to use these actors? We have 3 points on that. First of all, those actors still have those religion people who they're protecting are their users. They're the one who using the, I don't know, services, like on YouTube, like on Facebook. Muslims are still using it. And they're protecting them for not to be generalized, not to be harmed, not to be, I don't know, insulted on their content, just as they protect someone who is gay and someone who is speaking openly against them and saying, okay, this is problematic, and this is the same part of identity you cannot change so simply. This is part of identity who's generalized, you're usually generalized throughout, and this is what we're trying to protect. It is about how this content is actually, in the vast majority of cases, is fast to jump to conclusions, to generalize these people, and to even further out, harms they're presenting to them. And we believe this is important. Also, shares that people have on Facebook, on YouTube, can usually take even good documentaries, take them out of the context, use insulting language or something like that to generalize those nations and to further on create harm upon those people. Any questions now? Go.
Yeah, you said that this will be removed on request. So basically, I can ask for anything I don't like to be removed,
No.
as long as I can cloak it under religion.
Thank you.
Justification.
Not everything. You have some criteria on the religion, as it is on Islam. You have some way of checking and balancing something out. You cannot say, I don't know, regular chants of, I don't know, Catholic Church will still be there. You cannot say that they're insulting to you. But if someone creates against Catholic Church, you can say, okay, by our merits, or even in generalization, we use this further on. Not to come to, no thank you, not to come to the reason, why is this so specific about this insulting part, when you see someone who is not even openly attacking you, but when someone starts to criticize you, your part of identity, which is religious part of identity, you easily to close up. Why? This is a part of identity of our identity, which is built up upon dogmas that are presented to ourselves as an earlier childhood. This is not just dogma who says how we should live life. This is dogmas which are the main merits for how do we perceive what good life is. When someone challenges you, or even slightly tries out to be polite on this way of abstract criticism through these medias, you perceive as you're being attacking. It perceives that your burden is to justify your religions, and ergo, when you perceive that, you're more prone to be defensive against those people who are judging you, to be more prone to be radicalized as an individual when someone talks about your. You have in your head flashbacks of you constantly having to justify why do you believe so, and all flashbacks that someone anonymous, and thank you, is attacking you constantly. We believe this point of radicalization of individual is extremely important on two levels. First of all, on future change of your perception you are. Religion does change through time. It changes through education. We have example of that Muslims around Muslim world, especially Muslim women. Problem and Pope in, I don't know, Catholic Church is trying to change things. We believe this is going to damage those changes because those people will not be so prone to accept that if they had history constantly being attacked on. If you have history, someone is judging your religion, you will be harder in your head to actually come upon and see and perceive their arguments as good one in future through education. You will have, I know, even if you're attacking parents, they will influence their children who are in the process of education to have more closed mind in future. Second point is about context of multiculturalization. The most criticism which is directed is from west to the east, from, I don't know, Christianity to Islam part. And this is creating some way of, negative thinking, negative narrative between these two, in this world of multiculturalism. Problem is, further on these conflicts, once created on this level of multiculturalism, it's hard to divide from other relationships that we have with those people. Further on, damaging our discuss that we could have. What I presented to you today is an issue which we have to censorize by these agents because the insults that are polluting the discourse, creating the narrative of hatred between these two actors. Sorry.
And then I'd welcome and call upon the leader of the opposition to respond to the hearing.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, we as an opposition have identified a huge problem with the way that this motion was presented. First of all, there was no criteria in which it was explained when is something deemed as insulting. Who deemed by who, and what criteria does one comment or one post have to meet in order to be deemed insulting and removed from the internet? Having no such criteria, anything can be interpreted as insulting and anything can be removed from the internet, causing what? We believe that this will directly cause a restriction of freedom of speech and expression and censorship. And this is bad because there are some opinions that are expressed that directly clash with some points and concepts of religion. But I will get to that constructive case. Let's see what other points and other arguments they have presented. Firstly, they said that we need to have that when we as a person who garnishes these religious views reads something or reads a article about this, we perceive this as insulting and have a need to get defensive and have a need to justify our religion. Well, firstly, this is exactly the problem. perceive? How do we perceive something that is insulting, and how do we define something that is insulting? And even if we get called out or criticized by our beliefs, it is not simply enough to remove them. It is good to explain why you believe in what you believe and why you garnish the beliefs of your religion. And second of all, they talk about how this somehow is damaging to the discussion, but we believe that if we further the discussion and we want to see the reality in which this discussion exists, all views must be shown, even those that are sometimes insulting, even though we have no clear criteria of what insulting means and who deems it as insulting. Moving on with my constructive case. Okay.
If that is true, why do we actually censorize people who are openly attacking gay people on YouTube? Why do we censorize those who are neglecting the Holocaust victims who are actually speaking against this? Why do we actually use our logic in those examples?
Yes, because they directly attack them, and there are certain criteria which the comment needs to be fulfilled in order to be removed. And there you have mentioned none. Moving on with my constructive case. What does this mean for the freedom of speech and freedom of expression? Let's be honest, this is censorship, and these comments are going to be removed by unknown criteria. What will this cause? The concept of our perception of criticism. What happens with those concepts who have direct clash with religion? What happens to feminism, and what happens to some concept of science? Many times when people create their criticism concerning creationism, they use it in a form that will be they use it in a wording that will be acceptable by the masses. If I, as a religious person, get offended by this because it somehow believes, I have no right to remove this post because it is the belief of another human being who legitimately justify why does he believe that why does he believe in not in creationism. Okay. Moving on. No, thank you. Moving on. What will this mean for the search engines, and what will this mean for the quality of search engines? Let's say that we do censor this and some information are not going to be available to us. Some articles, some videos, and some comments are not going to be there on the internet. What do we do? But as we know, hate speech does not start from the internet, and hate speech will not end there. Right. So if there is and there will be a demand, because these people let's say we go to the case that you do say the criteria is hate speech, these people will still exist. So if there is a demand on the internet for something, the internet always enables it. We see that the internet is where you find out that people have very weird beliefs and desires, and all of those desires are met through various different sites. So the hate will find a way. So if we can't use the legitimate search engines, and we should use the legitimate search engines, because if we use a legitimate search engine on YouTube, we have 10 different articles and 10 different ideas and 10 different perspectives, which will widen the discussion. No, thank you. But what happens if we don't have them? We go to proxy servers or 4chan or other forms which do not have any form of censorship, and we express our hate there. So we see this as no effective measure, because hate will still exist and hate will still be on the internet. Moving on. No, thank you. If we define this as a mechanism, this is not where hate speech starts. It is merely a mechanism through which we. And if we remove this mechanism, another one will occur, and we can always find a way to express our beliefs. And my point will refer to a discussion about the topic. Why is it so important to have all opinions and an unbiased reality shown for this particular topic? We believe that this is the reality we live in. This is a world where religion is criticized, a world where religion is even sometimes insulted. And it is very important to have all of these beliefs, and the internet should be an unbiased representation of that reality, because it sparks discussion. And when we are sparked with this discussion, we are more challenged to explain our beliefs, and more challenged to explain why do we believe in this particular thing, and why do we believe that religion is bad, or we believe that creationism is not a viable theory. So we get a more objective and in a mechanism for which our arguments must be more thoroughly explained. So in conclusion, because we believe that the perception of what is insulting and what isn't cannot be clearly defined or explained, and because that will cause problems such as limitation of freedom of speech and expression, which is going to censor and stop some forms of discussion which are necessary in order to come to a justified conclusion, and because that this will not be effective because people will always find a way and a mechanism to change, we believe, and I urge you to oppose this motion.
Okay, I thank the speaker for the and we welcome the deputy leader of the opposition. Here, here.
Madam Speaker, we don't think that free speech has an inherent value in itself if it doesn't produce something. And we are happy that the first opposition accepted our criteria for discussion. We think that this discussion will be, that on their side of the House will have less discussion and less engagement, and I'll go more into that. But first, a couple of points of rebuttal. First, on definition. We think that we can agree upon some reasonable scenarios or examples that can happen, so we like a really abstract definition, so we can have a really tight criteria. For example, depiction of Prophet Muhammad would be insulting. For example, depiction of a Christ in a miniskirt would be insulting. On the other hand, for example, saying that abortion is a right for women would not be insulting. It doesn't directly relate to religion. So we think there is a distinction here to be made. We don't think that now any feminist post will be, will be removed upon request because somehow indirectly it insults religion. We think that direct instances of something that is in majority of the cases by the religious people viewed as insulting would be removed, and we think we can agree upon that and have a debate. Okay, now this discussion they want to have, and like this, they say, well, now these people would have to justify, and to explain their religion, etc., etc. Well, the beauty of religion and the point of religion, you don't actually have to rationally explain why you believe. It is a kind of a wager that, you choose to believe in something that creates your meaning in life. We don't think that there is a benefit or that there is a value in making people defend their religion and making people explain why their religion is good or rational if it can actually be explained, or to give you some logical proof that God exists, etc., etc. We don't think that there is a value in that. We don't see why that kind of discussion is good. But on the other hand, when they say we should have a reality, we should show, because in reality we have people who insult religion, so we should have that on Facebook. Firstly, we don't see why that reality is good. Just because something is a reality, it doesn't mean that it has some benefits, so we should allow it on these kinds of websites. But more further, we already told you that it creates harms, because the most of these posts and most of this content, the only point of them is to insult. Let's be realistic, maybe 5% or 10% of these posts are some documentaries that may insult religion or some constructive posts. But most of them are flame wars, where people comment on Facebook, fight each other on a very basic level and insulting each other. We don't think that has some constructive value that benefits the discussion and engagement. Because of the way people perceive these insults, they are more likely to radicalize and from actually engaging in discussion about how they can make their religion and their way of life work within for example, how Muslim people can make some of their traditions work within a Western liberal framework, etc. We think that when you have this kind of insults and when you have this fast spread of this kind of content, we think that it is less likely for them to be able to communicate and to be able to to resolve these things. So if they accept the criteria that they need to engage and we need to have some kind of discussion, but they never say how is that discussion going to look like and what are the concrete benefits of it. Because on this side of the house we show you that there is going to be less engagement and there is no inherent value in free speech, especially because this content is not of some big quality, and that there are alternative platforms in which this content can be created, like critical content of religion in debates on television, etc. These companies should do this because they should care about the user experience of the users. Because primary function of Facebook is to have social connections on the internet. We think that it is in their interest to protect their users from being harmed and from being assaulted, and that for democratic debate there are other places. Okay, now, no, Larry, thank you. Now, why is this problematic in today's context, in international relations? Because we see that there is a conflict between, for example, many states in the Western world and in the Middle East. There have been a lot of conflicts, and there have been bad depictions of people who are from Muslim faith, etc. So we have a lot of clash there. What happened with the innocence of Muslims is that even if not necessarily all the people deem this as insulting, and even if not all people are then motivated to go out and burn an embassy, this is problematic because leaders use that to further radicalize this movement and gain momentum. Because then they can show that the Western world is against them, that the Western world is insulting their basic values. They use this kind of posts and this kind of content that to further the clash between these cultures. It is problematic, firstly, because of the international relations and the harms that cause. We have actual protests and actual people who were hurt and who were killed in the protests that happened after the instance of Muslims. We don't think that they were in any way legitimate, or that it was in any way a proportionate response. We are just saying that in the context of these movements that exist there and the way they are structured, it creates a very big harm when you do something like that, even if it is not rationally legitimizes this kind of violence in any way. It consequentially leads to it. We think that is very problematic. Yes.
What do you think is going to happen to those religious people that are radical, and then they're going to learn that nobody can say anything about their religion that they can think of that it's insulting? Well,
firstly, because all religions will be protected, we don't think that they will, perceive that they have some kind of a special treatment. They will not think now, Islam is protected and we can do whatever they want. They will perceive that people respect our deepest beliefs and things that are deepest to our personality and to us as humans. So we don't see a logical link between this and legitimizing, giving a carte blanche to people of religion to do anything they want. This just recognizes that these things that they believe and these things they hold dear should not be insulted. That this doesn't mean that they will feel that now, terrorist attacks or something is justified, or that some of their political beliefs are justified just because of that. We don't see that link, especially as we have political debates in this. We showed you that this is problematic because of the international relations. We showed you this is problematic because of multiculturalism and because of the ways it is going to be perceived. It is going to create less engagement. It is going to cause more harms for these people and for our societies. We don't think that this free speech brings any significant benefits and that it is actually a quality content. Because of all these reasons, we beg you to propose this motion. Thank you.
The deputy leader of opposition. Here.
So what you see in the debate by the proposition team is that they actually have a problem, but I want to cut the channel for solving it, which is discussion. But I will continue to that in my constructive speech. First, I have some rebuttals regarding the case that they presented. Firstly, they said that the first speaker said that when these people beliefs are attacked, they have a burden to justify, and they they need to implement this model so these people can be safe and don't engage in discussion in order to justify their means, because this leads to radicalization. But later the second speaker told that there will be some criteria for the reality, and it also makes the reality better. So free speech isn't isn't good as itself, but it's because of information flow which proposes. But let's now face more about our perspective. But before I continue,
Feminism goes in women's position is not too narrow and too superficial. In the order that, like that, they actually alienate the women who are actually watching this on YouTube or on the future. Those women are less likely to actually learn more about feminism, to actually educate themselves and create real change in their society.
So yeah, but that's not really true, because right now we can deem this as insult, and we can censor it on the internet. So the feminist values and learning about women education and further development can be constrained because of this censor, because it directly clashes with religion. Some oceans about abortion, women rights in Muslim world, and etc. And just feminism, and also science and politics. But let's continue more with our constructive. They said that reality is not good as itself. Yeah, reality sometimes may be bad, but our perception of reality may solve the real problem. So our perception on this reality must be unbiased, because the problem can be solved only through discussion. And what the proposition team says is that the discussion is bad, and we now see that the discussion is the only channel on which we can solve this problem, because the bad reality can be solved only through discussion, and the discussion can be made only through free speech, because that's the information flow we are getting for making the discussion. So we are not saying that in all cases these videos or news on the internet are good, but even the bad ones are leaving a space for discussion, which makes the perception changes, and with the perception changes and with getting to know both sides, we can change the reality, and we can later adapt, or maybe we can later adapt and justify our opinions, our beliefs, and the stuff we are saying. Later I thought, no, thank you. They thought that we should adapt our tradition. But yeah, adapting our tradition is making through discussion, because adapting is when someone challenges your first values, and then you are adapting it to the society, because someone in the first place challenges. And if you if you really censor it, this news cannot get to people. This information cannot get to people, and people won't engage in discussion because they're living in a dark spot. And this will further bring to more radicalization instead of traditional adaptations as you proposed. Let's talk more about the radical religion movement. They said that radicalization is made through the internet. That the bad internet makes radicalization, but it's actually another way around. Radicalization makes the bad internet, and the internet is the place when we can challenge radicalization and change the beliefs of those radical people. What they are proposing by that model is when BBC says that ISIS is mainly conducted by ISIS terrorists are mainly Sunni people. It mainly directly clashes with Sunnis, and Sunnis may condemn it as insult to them, and that information cannot be cut. So it will further lead to radicalization, because people here don't really know what's radicalization, don't really mean know what is better radicalization, etc. So the only way to cut this radicalization is through the internet. And because here we show you that we have problems with radicalization, with the racial government are proposing that a discussion are the only way of solving this problem, and discussion can be global and more effective on the internet, and because we saw that the radicalization make bad internet instead of other way around. We believe the discussion can only solve the problem, and that's why we beg for free. We are very proud to oppose. Thank you.
thank the audio speaker for this fine remarks, and we welcome the member of government to extend on that case. Here we go.
Thank you for the floor, Madam Speaker. The moment when the opposition story is falling apart is the moment when we actually have the Europe and the right-wingers rise up. When Marine Le Pen and Nigel Farage and all others who have similar opinions says that there are people who are coming from outside and stealing away your jobs. In that moment we see that actually people doesn't follow the engagement. They don't want to engage. They want to separate. They want their ideas to be right. The basic presumptions. We are debaters. We have logical thinking and critical thinking. The thing is that the vast majority of the people don't use that kind of logic. They presume that the things that are in their own society, that are around them, are the right things. In the moment when you actually build, even when you actually put them on the internet, and when we actually don't censorship these kind of things, we are actually having the group and mass thinking and creating the virtual reality that actually is creating an incentive to bring even more divide in our society. But before I go to that, I'm going to give you 2 points of the rebuttal. First is they say that if there is no understand, and the third thing is why it's good to have it all on the internet. I already said, but I'm going to give more. I'm going to talk more about that in my constructed speech. So I'm going to do 2 points of extensive in this case. First is why YouTube, Google, and this kind of medias actually have obligation to do this, and B, why they have real influence on people in real-time life, and why they're pushed on the other side. And the second is incentives of those who are actually hurt by this policy, and not only by them, and also how those people are reactions. So let's start with YouTube and Google. YouTube, Google, and Facebook, etc. They are actually made on the perception of the freedom that you actually can engage with things in your society on all over the world. What's happening in the moment? Those kind of groups created who are right wing, who have the ideas of offensive. Remove that kind of content, you are actually having the creation of the separate group. You have the group who are actually thinking different. So the thing is, if you don't remove if you don't remove if they don't remove this kind of context from the internet, they are shaping the reality. The reality that they are shaping is that there are groups who are hating each other. So the incentive of these groups is actually to see that there is so many people who are hating them just by likes and just by posting in that group. The problem creates in moment when actually in that group you have like 20, 50 or 30 or 100 people who are actually saying one and laughing on the Prophet Muhammad's picture. The moment when one Muslim comes, or one person who doesn't think the same, say you are wrong, at that moment you got the whole group jumping on them. So you are creating the reality, a reality and the perception that is different, that there is so much more people who are actually hating than the real thing that is happening. And the thing is that is transferring from the internet to the reality. You have seen the groups who are actually hating each other. You saw it on the internet. So if there is on the internet, why that wouldn't be truth in the real time? In the real time, there is much different story. In real time, you have people who just don't care about these things. But incentivized by the stories on the internet, they start to believe that there are divides. You have that brings to the radicalization. Not only the minorities, but the majorities also. The moment when you actually have the as the guy with the bomb on his head, in the moment you bring all Muslims, those who are aggressive, in the moment that are all aggressive and that all bringing bombs, and the whole Muslims are proposing the violence, and that is not true. Go.
But the people who are in are are the radicals. You're just choosing their side on this discourse. That's what you're doing.
No, the whole Muslim religion is hurted by the when they put the Muhammad. Those who are actually working in schools, those who are working in education, those who are working in the government, all people are hurt by this, by this kind of content. And we believe that is not standing by the story they are selling. That only those people who are radicals are going to be hurt by this. Second is the personal beliefs. The personal beliefs is something that is calling a major reaction from us. In the moment when you actually became hurt by this, your motives becomes different. You are portrayed society as someone who is aggressive, who is violent, who's going to destroy everything just by the idea that you are a Muslim, and that is bad. In the moment when you are actually divided in the society, that when you have the image that whole society majority is against you just because you are protecting minutes, just because you are just because you are different. So in that kind of case we are failing as a society. So we of extreme importance to remove this kind of content, so we don't have the radicalization and segregation of the people, because the reality that's created on the internet are going in the reality that we are all living in. And because of all of this, we beg you to propose this motion. Thank you.
Am I good to go?
1 sec.
Okay.
So, thank you very much to the speaker for this final month, and then we welcome the member of opposition to extend on their case. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Right, most honourable judges, ladies and gentlemen. Now, before I go on into my extension for the side of the opposition, I'd like to address some of the issues we've heard so far from the side of proposition as a whole. And I'd like to start by addressing their general idea, which we think is implicit in all their case, that basically religion is something really, really special. We haven't really proven that, ladies and gentlemen. The only thing that they said about it was that somehow religion is a part of our identity, and that makes it ultra special, like more important than anything else in the world. And we take issue with that, ladies and gentlemen, because there are many parts of our identity. For example, political opinions are a part of identity, ideologies. There's many parts of our identity. And for all of those parts, we see and we actually encourage this sort of criticism. We don't think criticism on political opinions is a bad thing, at least not in the West, that they're talking about. We think it's a good thing because it advances your political thinking, etc. We don't see why religion is that different, and we think that it's that they have to prove that to us in order for what they're saying to be true. But secondly, ladies and gentlemen, I want to address a little bit the scope of what they're suggesting, because what that side has failed to say so far is that, first of all, there are laws against hate speech, for example, existing right now. So which addresses the most extreme sorts of content of the talking about. So since they're here proposing something, we're guessing they're proposing something that goes beyond hate speech, right? As pointed out in his POI, they're talking even about feminism that might be insulting to some people, etc. And we're saying if you start with that, then the scope of their measure is going to be huge, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to include everything, from documentaries like Religulous, from satire and comics like George Carlin, movies like Borat. All those things contain stuff that might be insulting to some very religious people. And you know what? Tough, ladies and gentlemen, that's life. Okay, my opinion might be insulting to you, that doesn't mean you have the right to squash it. That's what we're saying on the side of the opposition. And what basically they're doing is taking the stance of people like, let's say, the Golden Dawn here in Greece, who tried to squash a theater because they had a play called Corpus Christi, which portrayed Christ as a gay guy, right? What they did, they tried to, they went outside the theater and they didn't allow anyone to go in, and they tried to squash that content. That's what they're suggesting. That's what they want to do, ladies and gentlemen. And they're also claiming that this will somehow diminish radicalism. This is radicalism. You disagree?
Yeah, but there are, like as we said, there are other platforms for this kind of discourse. You can have a movie in the theater. We just
I'll go there. Okay, I'll go there now since you mentioned it. Okay, why we think the internet is the place for this and not the other platforms like a movie theater or like a TV that you mentioned? Then the other person doesn't have the right to respond, ladies and gentlemen. On a YouTube video, you can just post something underneath it. So there's a discussion. On the TV, you're just a passive recipient of that. So if there's going to be something that is insulting to me, I'd much rather it is on a medium where I can respond to it, rather than the TV where I can just watch it, and that's it basically. Because obviously the channel that shows that is not going to allow me to say my opinion. Whereas in the internet, I can. No, thank you. And the final thing that they were talking about was stereotypes, and how this sometimes reproduces stereotypes like with Muhammad and the bomb and stuff. While that might be true, and while I might not like it personally, generally we allow stereotypes to be reproduced. Okay, we don't like that, but we allow sexual stereotypes to be reproduced, right? You don't like it, I don't like it, but it's not illegal. That shouldn't be either. But moving on to my constructive case and my extension, ladies and gentlemen. No, thank you, not yet. Right, I want to talk a little bit about the nature of religion, and also a little bit more about the nature of those media. But first, religion, ladies and gentlemen, because as I said, they haven't proven to us that it's something really special that should have this extra protection than any other source of public discourse, ladies and gentlemen, than politics, than anything else, basically. And why is that? They say because of dogma and all that. But dogma, ladies and gentlemen, we inside the opposition believe that dogma changes throughout time, right? We've seen that with the Catholic Church, for example. It doesn't still claim that the earth is flat, okay? It has adapted to and accepted, albeit with a few hundred years later than the rest of the world, but they do at some point change, right? And in order for them to change, we think they need criticism, ladies and gentlemen. There's no reason for them to change if there is no criticism. I need to be able to go out and say, okay, you know what? The Catholic Church still believes that the earth is flat, and that is ridiculous. I need to be able to say that in order for them to change. Yeah.
You will not have change because radical part of religion people use these attacks, these posts.
But we have had change. That's what I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen. And we have had change in the Catholic Church. Why? Because the Catholic Church is in the West, where generally discussion and free speech is much more advanced than, say, Islamic countries. And that is why we think that Christianity has advanced in that sense more than Islam, ladies and gentlemen. Public discussion, even if it sometimes can be offensive for some people, it does advance opinions. It does change dogma, and we think that's a good thing. Right? For religion as for anything else. No, thank you. So basically what we're saying is that we need free speech because more free speech means more progress, even in religion, in everything. Right? And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about the nature of those media. I've already hinted upon that as a response to the POI. But there is a very big difference between traditional media like the TV, the radio, the newspapers, and between the sort of internet media that we're talking about here, like Google and especially YouTube. And that is that there is no way to respond to the content that is produced in traditional media, right? You just have to accept it as it is, and there is no way to express that you disagree with that. That is what causes frustration, ladies and gentlemen. Seeing something that can be offensive or that you disagree with in a sort of place like YouTube, where you can just underneath post your opinion or tear apart the person's arguments or whatever, we think that that is okay. That doesn't create the sort of radicalism you're talking about. It's Fox News that creates this sort of radicalism when it portrays Muslims as the ultimate evil, right? And so we think because basically those media offer an equal access to everybody, to all opinions, to anybody, regardless of how much money they have or whatever, or where they are in the world, we think there's less need of protection there and not more as they would have you believe. So, because we don't think religion is something so special, because we think dogma does and need to change, and because of the nature of those media, we're proud to oppose.
May I? Thank you for the floor, Madam Speaker. So, what the opposition taught us anything crucially new, they have just continued the story from the first government, and what we see there is that they miss the whole point of the government on 2 points. First one being why is religion more important, and the second one being how does it change in society. So first thing, why is the religion more important, and that is the first rebuttal. Religion is something that is intertwined with our everyday life, so it creates our own identity. It defines how we'll get our today, how we'll function today, and everything. Within our own society, we believe that religion is way too important for us to be just changed in everyday life, like they present it to us. Second thing, when you counter the religion, it creates an emotional reaction to you, because you don't attack religion as an abstract point. You attack your own identity. You're yourself insulted by it, and that is why you emotionally react to that. And I'll go further on that through. Second thing is how changes happen in societies that are ready. So, like they've told us, science, feminism, any movement that has a logic behind it to change anything will change there, and then those societies will reflect on the other societies. So if we change the religion to say that Earth is not flat anymore, we changed it when we felt ready in Rome, and then it reflected to other societies outside of Rome, and that is how it changes. So we'll change something in USA, then it will reflect on UA, then it will reflect on Asia, Africa, and everything else, and that is how changes with the logic happen. But this is not actually a logical explanation. What these insults do, and what we're talking here about, are blunt insults. The Innocence of Muslims is a movie that bluntly insulted the Muslim society. Second thing, the depiction of Muhammad doesn't exist for a couple of centuries now, because it is not acceptable for Muslims to present Muhammad in any cartoon or any depiction as such. So that is why it is insulting to them, and it insults their identity, and that is why there is no logic behind it. That is why it should be removed, because it only causes people to act emotionally, and when they react emotionally, they insult the other societies, and that is where segregation happens. So on to my two clashes. First one will tell you how do these the open networks, and second one, why is it okay to restrict free speech. So first of all, societies, religions are becoming too far separated from each other. So religions are not communicating with themselves, and the members of those, the supporters of those religions are not so integrated within each other in our multicultural societies. So when it comes to that, when we see anything on YouTube, anything on Google, anything on open networks which allow everything to be posted, we don't really act logically. Why? Because we don't have time to scroll the whole YouTube comment sites. We just see the insults to us. We accept it emotionally, and it insults our own identity. And that is the problem, because when we react emotionally, we do the same thing to the other side. And when we do it, to the other side, that is how it rolls on to majority of comments on YouTube. That is how it happens on the majority of Google comments. That is how it happens on the open network, because everything is free to be posted. And as it said, you just YouTube. That is the problem, and that is what my partner was explaining to you in the beginning of his speech. It is the emotional reaction that is crucial, and we don't think twice when that happens. We just accept it and act with emotions. Second thing is, why is this problematic? Because when this happens on majority of comments, and that's what my partner was also talking about, it creates the group mindset which pressures our societies. And YouTube, Google have strong influence in the societies in USA, in EU, in everything. And those are multicultural societies. That is where stereotypes are created. That is where stereotypes are enhanced. When you see the insults and accept them as such, and when you see them on multiple levels, when not only multiple levels, but of one part of the society, that is when you justify all those stereotypes. That is the moment when you justify the insults, and that is the moment when we need to ban all of that. When we say it's stop to the insults, we don't want the justification for those stereotypes. The second thing is that when all of that happens on internet, majority of people are on the internet and they read all of that. And when they read all of that, the group mindset pressures them. I'll accept it in a second. They accept it, and then it's transferred to the reality, and then they act by those opinions, and then they act by those insults, and then they act by those emotional reactions. And that is the problem that goes into the real life and everyday life. Before I continue, yes.
So you accept that all people are on the internet, that they have access to all those social media, but they're not gonna take part in it, they're not gonna discuss in it, they're not gonna change their minds. That doesn't make any sense.
No, actually, it does make sense, because that is what we see. When the innocence of Muslim happened, two groups were created. One that was insulting the Muslims, and the other one that was everybody who were insulting the Muslims, and you didn't get the public discussion about it. The public discussion happened on the more academic level, whereas it was blamed to be real insult to the Muslim society, and that is when we accepted that it is an insult, and that is when we accepted to remove it, and that is when we accepted it is not to be viewed. But on the internet, we just had blaming of each other, blaming between two groups, and we didn't really have it all. We have any public discussion. And that is when we say restrict the free speech, and that is the second clash. When we see that the hate speech, the endangering of others, the visible harms, we say restrict the free speech. And this all exists, we've seen it. There is no discussion. All of it, and you never include logic into explaining all of those things. And even if you do, even if you try your best to explain to somebody, some other guy who will come there to flame will just insult you for saying stupid things and be like, oh no, that doesn't matter. And then the third one will connect to the insult, and then the insults continue. So the logical explanation and logical arguments are lost with all the flaming and insults, and we don't really get the logical explanations. Second thing is that the perception change doesn't happen on the internet. Why? Because we don't have that public discourse there. We don't have that opinion changes. We don't have any logic behind it. We just have insults. And when we have insults which are reflected on the reality, we don't see the perception change in reality. Why? Because if we act by insults and by emotional reaction, we act in a way that we segregate other groups. And when we segregate other groups, we don't really see the perception change. And for all the reasons that we have shown you, please vote for the government. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We're discussing today whether we should set limits to the social media and the people who are on the social media and talking about religion by insulting or whoever thinks they're insulting, and they can do it in whatever criteria that we never got from the side of the proposition. What we came here today as the opposition to tell you is that the criticism that exists in the social media, discussion that exists in that social media is really vital, and we really need it. And why? Because this is not going to lead to radicalization, which is going to happen if the proposition is true and what they say is true. And also that has showed you that this is how religion is going to change, and how the world changes is through discussion and those people being able to say whatever they think that they think it's true. So first of all, about the criticism, on the side of the proposition, they have been telling us that there is no real criticism on the social media. But ladies and gentlemen, even when you have on the internet, you have a lot of beliefs, you have a lot of information, you have everybody has access to the internet, and everybody can go there and see whatever they want and see what other people are uploading. It's user-generated content, and you're able to actually discuss it. And we have seen this happening, actually, ladies and gentlemen. We have been seeing people joining into groups and actually asserting more opinions, asserting more facts to actually support their opinions, and that's what's actually happening on the social media. So even with satire and humiliation, and if, for example, in the Catholic Church, they were not supporting gay marriage, and you were seeing like 2 cents being like acting like gay people as a gay couple, that could actually bring some more thoughts on you, like why wouldn't they want gay people to be supported from the Catholic Church? That's the way satire works, ladies and gentlemen. That's how the internet works, because there are just simple people who are taking videos of themselves, talking about stuff that's really important to them, and criticizing and making fun of them, because that's how you get to think about stuff. And also, humor is like really different to all kinds of people. So you can't set real limits to who is insulted and who feels betrayed or anything but from the people who are on the social media, who is everybody. People like we are. So we're saying that this hate is going to be revealed. This hate that might exist in the social media through the everyday life. And this is worse, ladies and gentlemen, because as my partner has showed you, in the social media, you can actually reply to the uploader of the video, or you can reply to a thread or stuff like that. So actually, this is a way to deal with all these things. If it wasn't like that, those people would be in those hate spaces or whatever would be in the everyday life, and that would be a lot worse, because they wouldn't be questioning what they have been doing or what their true beliefs are. Before I move on, I'll take.
Okay, yeah, but issues like gay marriage and the logic behind it, why we should equalize every single member of our society, whereas insults such as innocence of Muslims don't have a logic behind them which equalizes people in our society, but it only insults one side, and then that insult creates
I totally understand. We say that they shouldn't be they should be criticized in this way or whatever way, because this exactly is how make people think. We don't believe that religion is a specific and totally different thing that should be protected. We believe that the hate speech criteria that exists right now is actually what sets the limits to something being insulting, ladies and gentlemen. We don't see why religion should be in the top of our thoughts and should be protected. We say, though, that this is going to lead to people being radicalized. And why? Because only the radicals, ladies and gentlemen, will care about what is being uploaded every day or whatever. So those are the ones that the government is supporting right now, and those that have really extreme opinions and get offended by anything that they see, and those actually are going to be, their reports are going to get accepted, because that's how it's going to work, as government says. So they never explain why religion should be more, no, thank you, more important. Also, we are saying, before I move on, question?
Okay, the problem with radicals is they actually feed on this sort of conflict, because they use them like innocence and Muslim to legitimize their more aggressive behavior, saying we have a reason, we have a cause in our fight, and to support and to actually gain popular support of mainstream.
Thank you very much. Now, the radicals, ladies and gentlemen, don't need a post on Facebook or a video on YouTube to actually be radicalized. They're radicalized if they see, for example, Muslims on ISIS, for example, the veil being more wide. That's what triggers them. That's everyday life, ladies and gentlemen, and not the internet. So what we have been saying is that the change, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to happen through those social media that everybody is in there. The opposition has that the change is going to happen within the country, but what are we talking about? The world is like, it's a global war. The social media, the internet is everywhere. So if people want to criticize, to talk about what other religions are, for example, in the West, and happening in Asia, they are able to do it, and that's how the change comes, ladies. And how we know that the change has come and is coming and is happening is because in the West, actually, that we see and we know that it's more liberal and we have more freedom of speech, actually the religions here have evolved. Whereas in the other parts of the world, for example, in Middle East, that we know that they have less freedom of speech. We know that they have stayed more radical than we are right now. And we don't want those people to be that radical. And we believe that through the social media and through the letting people set their beliefs on the internet and through the social media, through videos, through satires, through anything they can. We believe that only this will lead to vital discussion that will lead people to be less radicalized and actually evolve the world. For all these reasons, we beg you to oppose.